Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Perspective. I'm your host, Ethan Micheal, and alongside me is my special co-host for the evening, Mr. Kenneth Leonard. How are you?
I'm a special co-host. Oh, well, stop it.
You were one of the first people to reach out to me, so you are very special.
Well, I was just slightly ahead of the curve of seeing that something good was happening over here. So,
Well, I don't know what I would do without you, man. You've been a great asset to me, and I am appreciative of having you in my life.
Well, I appreciate you too. I think without me, you'd have a great channel with lots of really talented and smart people. So
I just surround myself with smart people. That's about it.
Well, same.
Anyways, I'm pretty excited to bring our first caller on in just a moment. His name's Axel. He's written a few books. He reached out through me on Facebook, and he wants to talk about psychics. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Sweet. Let's do this. All right. Axel, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. You are on with Kenneth and Ethan. How's it going today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I understand you want to talk about psychics.
Yes. This is a topic I studied in depth. I have a book called Project Stargate and Remote Viewing Technology, which is a compilation of the CIA's files on psychic spying. The Stargate project went on in the 70s and 80s into the early 90s, and it studied psi phenomenon and psychic abilities for use to military applications. And if you've seen The Men Who Stare at Goats, that's kind of a funny movie about the topic. Have you seen that?
I have not. Men Who Stare at Goats. Oh,
yeah, it's a George Clooney movie, and he's dreamy, so I watch everything that he makes.
George Clooney is dreamy.
Yeah, and of course they make fun of it and stuff, which is fine. It's a funny movie, but if you look at the studies, it's pretty compelling in my opinion. And I think they don't know exactly what's happening, but the probability against chance, it's been proven in laboratory experiments and universities all around the U.S. that it's greater than the probability of chance a lot of times.
When you said, and I may have misheard you, but I thought, okay, you said they don't know what's happening, but that whatever it is that's happening is occurring at a greater probability than chance. Is that accurate?
Right.
Right. What do you have any of those numbers handy? What those numbers look like?
Well, in Russell Targ's book, The Reality of ESP, and he was one of the main, he wasn't really a psychic in the program, but he was one of the main facilitators at SRI, Stanford Research Institute, where a lot of this went on. And in his book, he talks about how you've heard the claim that from the National Institutes of Health, they claim that aspirin lowers the risk of heart attacks. Have you heard of that?
I've heard this.
Yes.
So he makes the point that the double-blind experiments, which he talks about in these books, have statistical probabilities against chance that are 10 times higher than the threshold that the National Institutes of Health used to determine that aspirin lowers the risk of heart attacks. So it's unreasonable to deny the results of these double-blind experiments and then also accept the evidence that aspirin prevents heart attacks, because the probability against chance was 10 times higher in these. And there's a lot of specific experiments. I think it's beyond the scope of this talk, but if you search the CIA's reading room, if you just search Project Stargate, there's a bunch. There's one called An Assessment of Evidence for Psychic Functioning.
I know the one you sent me, Axel, and I did read through that. And one of the things I found, though, is that the hit rate only had a max of 37%, which seems to be less than a guess rate.
It seems to be what?
Less than like a guess rate, chance, no better than chance.
Well, I think, it's not. I've heard it said that the results are what you would call like small or medium scale, like better than chance. It's not like mind blowing better than chance, but it's still something's going on. And if you read the conclusion of that paper, it reads that it's clear to the author that anomalous cognition, which is more of the scientific term for anomalous cognition, is possible and has been demonstrated. It has been replicated in a number of forms across laboratories and cultures, and you can look all this up yourself. It's extensive, the amount of studies that have been done on this.
I would ask you if anomalous cognition is something that happens at a rate that is roughly equivalent to chance, how would we distinguish between anomalous cognition and lucky guesses?
Well, these experiments, are designed to, determine, the difference between those. And of course, there is going to be some chance, but when you keep seeing it being, a little bit better than chance again and again, it shows that something's happening. And again, nobody claims to know what exactly is happening, but that something unusual is happening.
So if we grant something unusual is happening, they're uncertain of what specifically is happening, wouldn't the more reasonable conclusion be, I'm not sure what's going on here and we need to investigate it more?
Yes, and that's what science is about. And I think anybody who's researching remote viewing is saying exactly that. The problem is professional skeptics scoff at published research without even looking at it, and few have taken the time to look at it seriously. And they've already decided that it's impossible, so it's not worth their time. And it takes a lot of time to dig into, really. And if you've already decided that physical reality is all there is and it's impossible, then you're not going to do the work.
I can tell you, while I am a skeptical person, I definitely haven't decided that it's impossible. I'm having my trouble. Excuse me. I just inhaled my spit. My bad. So I'm having trouble getting to the conclusion that psychics are real. And could you perhaps provide some of these studies, something that we can dive into and review? Sure.
Let's see. There is the one I listed. I have some saved here.
Well, in the interest of having a productive conversation here, I'm not sure how useful that's going to be, because we're not going to be able to read studies in real time and engage on those points. But I would ask if the government has or had a vested interest in establishing that psychic phenomena was a real thing. I'm curious why it is that America still invests so much money in surveillance. Why, if remote viewing is a legitimate thing, why it is that there weren't psychics, warning us about the coronavirus ahead of time. Why it is that we get caught off guard with things. It seems like if Project Stargate, and my impression of that research from the little bit that I've looked into it, is that the researchers were pretty split on whether the results were greater than chance. I'm just wondering why isn't it something that everybody is just aware of and recognizes as part of our public life and national defense strategy?
Well, I think that sorry, I'm getting some feedback here.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, it's good now. I think it's like a career death blow. It's most people are afraid of ridicule and looking into these things. So I think that's why it's not more accepted now. And but I do think it's still going on. And even in the government literature, they admit that this isn't something that you should rely on 100%. This should be a complementary thing, in war. And I do believe they're probably still using it. Or maybe they're just sleeping on it. The government does a lot of stupid things.
Why do you think people are scared to accept it? I mean, I would think if this is a reality, it would turn science on its head, and we'd all be pretty open to it. I mean, I can tell you if psychic phenomenon is real, I am open to it. I would love it.
Same. Yeah. If I had the choice between being sort of laughed at publicly or having the Powerball numbers, I would want the Powerball numbers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Laugh at me all you want. Hey.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, that's wonderful, and the world needs more people like you. But there are a lot of people in universities who have careers to defend. They're afraid of losing their job, or they've got a lot riding on. Physical reality is all there is, and this can't be possible. Maybe they've written stuff to the contrary. It's going against the grain, really.
What would change for the researchers or for the skeptics if psychic phenomena, even if psychic phenomena was demonstrated to be a legitimate and valid thing, we wouldn't know anything about the causation. We would just have a lot more questions, and I think the researcher would get to work researching. I find it, I don't know, just the implications of psychic phenomena are so consequential. It's hard to believe that people would suppress that. I think scientists would want to know about such things.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would not only find it fascinating, they'd wanting to be investigated continually, especially because it could be it could be used as a tool to improve our country overall. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Yeah. And I think it should be, but these things take time, money, investment, and you just have to have people willing to get into it.
I mean, it seems like if we had the capacity to tap into psychic individuals, so many lives could be saved. It sounds to me like what you're talking about is the suppression of this potentially life-saving knowledge by a group of interested individuals who essentially profit from the psychic being marginalized or otherwise rejected. Is that accurate?
That could be, but I think it's more just ignorance. People aren't really excited about this, and it just takes people being excited and into it and inspired. And there are some people like that, but I think as we go on, it might become more in vogue and more people might start using it more. I don't want to make another point of this. There's this one field of study called anomalous anticipatory activity, where they show you a bunch of images and suddenly an image will flash that's emotionally distressing. And again, they've demonstrated that their emotional response in these EEGs, I forget exactly how they measure it, but they anticipate the emotionally distressing image before it happens again and again, which is pretty interesting. That's anomalous anticipatory activity. If you look that up, there's a bunch of studies on that.
Did you say they anticipate it before it happens? And how do they go about anticipating?
So the emotional response, the emotionally distressing image can be detected before it actually flashes. And you can look that up if you Google, like I said, anomalous anticipatory activity. There's a bunch of stuff on that. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, another point is that we've all kind of had psychic hunches, and I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've had the experience where I feel like somebody's staring at you, and you turn around and sure enough somebody's staring at you, or you're thinking about somebody and they call you or they text you. My girlfriend and I, sometimes we don't even have to say things, we're going to say the same thing, quite often. So
what about, let me ask you this. Do you keep track of the misses, or do you only keep track of the hits? Because, like, for example, there are plenty of times when, just the other day I was thinking about my ex, and, she called me 5 minutes later, but throughout the day, I think about a lot of people and I don't hear from them. So are you factoring in the times you think about people and they don't call you, and then comparing them to the times that they do?
No, I admit I have not done that, and that's a good point. And I'm sure there's a lot of that. And again, I'll admit that there's plenty of fraud in this field, and there's plenty of fraudulent psychics and cold readers and stuff. But cold readers don't do the same thing really as remote viewers who can like draw out a target location pretty accurately. Just recently, a friend of a friend was missing, and actually reached out to some remote viewing groups on Facebook and talked to this guy who, I didn't tell him anything about the missing person, just that someone was missing. And he went ahead and drew out, like, he did whatever he does to remote view, and he sent me a bunch of images, and he did all this for free, by the way. He's not, making any money off this. And sure enough, like, he drew, like, nothing, none of it was conclusive. And unfortunately, the guy died before he was found. But he drew a face that looked a lot like this guy, and he drew all these little details that reflected this guy's personality, and all these things about that reflected the community he was involved in. It was pretty impressive to me. And a lot of people, police departments and stuff, have used psychics successfully. I'm kind of biased. I grew up on unsolved mysteries, of course.
Have you ever heard of something called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy?
No.
So the idea is that you've got this sharpshooter, and he shoots at the wall of a barn, and the bullets are sprayed all over the place. And he goes up to a couple bullets that are close together, and he draws a bullseye around him. And then someone walking by can look at that and go, man, whoever hit that bullseye, that's a good shot right there.
Mm.
This is very much like what it sounds to me like you're describing with the world of psychics. What Ethan asked about, there's a tendency, this happens with psychics, this happens with often with religious believers and intercessory prayer. We have a tendency to, keep track of the hits and lose track of the misses. What you said about having a moment where you feel like someone might be watching you, and you look, and sure enough, there's the creepy guy staring at you. I think we've all been there, but I think we've all also had that feeling and then looked and there's nobody. I think the last words that you said about being biased are a thing that we should all be super sensitive to. I don't have any objection in principle to psychic phenomena being a real thing, but in my experience, the evidence for it is pretty bad, and most of the reasons that people give for accepting psychic phenomena tend to be examples of cognitive traps, frankly.
Okay, well, at least I can admit that I'm biased. Everybody's biased.
Of course, we all have.
You act like you're not, but you definitely are. Have you looked at how many of the studies have you actually looked at in Project Stargate? With
regards to Project Stargate, I read the beginning of the article that you sent to Ethan. Found several problems with the methodology and the reasoning that was being used. It was exactly what I'm describing with counting the hits and not keeping track of the misses. And then I Googled the author of the study, went to the Wikipedia page, saw that she was one of two primary researchers on the project, and that the other primary researcher disagreed with her about their findings. So I read a bit about that, looked a little bit more at Project Stargate, and the conclusion that I arrived at was that this is a declassified document, essentially the CIA owning up to researching something that didn't really go anywhere.
Okay, so you looked at one study?
Well, just the one that you sent, yeah.
Correct.
I would assume that you'd send your best evidence if you're making a claim for something like psychic phenomena. If you've got something better, I'd be happy to look at it.
All right, yeah, I've got a whole list, and again, it's beyond the scope of this, but actually, I'll write a blog article with a bunch of these on. I have a website called Strange Tales Weekly, where we talk about strange tales. So,
and I'll own up. I'll own up. I am super duper hardcore biased in that I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. And as far as I can tell, the way to go about doing that is to be skeptical. I don't know of any better way to fit that bias that I like to live my life by. If you know of a better way, I'm all ears. But I do have a bias towards skepticism.
Fine, but professional skeptics, again, scoff at published research without even looking at it.
Can you give me an example?
No, they don't. No, they don't. Hold on. Ethan, I gotta say, no, they don't. A skeptic will look at the research because a skeptic wants to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. So they will want to look at the research. If they don't want to look at the research, by definition, they're not skeptics.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious what a professional skeptic is, but I mean, I'd like to be one. That being said, I mean, for example, I may be biased in the sense that I'm less likely to believe a supernatural claim. However, at the same time, you know, when you sent me that article, I went through it and read it, and I didn't particularly because they could only go up to a 37% success rate, and that was quite alarming. And then additionally, they tried referencing, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, Kenneth, prima facie?
Prima facie evidence.
Prima facie, and essentially stated that unless you can prove it's not a psychic, then it is. And I didn't find that to be a very convincing argument.
Yeah, there was no way in that research to distinguish between a positive hit and a lucky guess. And a great example of a professional skeptic would be James Randi, who for many years, the James Randi Foundation had $1 million cash prize for anyone who could demonstrate psychic phenomena as being a real thing, and no one claimed it. People tried, but they were never able to claim it.
Axel, are you familiar with the James Randi Educational Foundation?
Yes, I am.
Have you?
I haven't looked into the parameters of their challenge or whatever, but I mean, these studies have done it again and again, so I don't know why they're not getting their money.
Because they can't replicate anything under like actual test conditions. A great video to watch if you want to become familiar with James Randi would be when Johnny Carson had Uri Geller, who was this famous psychic. He had Uri Geller on his show, and Uri Geller was going to do all of his psychic stuff and bench spoons and do all the things that he was famous for. And Uri Geller was a test subject in Project Stargate. He went on the show, James Randi came out and exposed him. It's a fantastic video to watch. At the time, that guy was the big psychic. He was the John Edwards of the 1970s.
Well, not only that, when Kenneth says he debunked him, he was able to replicate what Uri was doing, example, the spoon bending, and show how it was done in an entirely natural and explainable way.
Yeah, the spoon bending, is just charlatan tricks for sure.
So I guess how would I distinguish between a charlatan psychic and a real psychic?
Well, I guess somebody's trying to make money or get famous. That's a big red flag. A lot of people who have, and I think everybody has psychic abilities. I think it's natural. I don't think it's supernatural. It's just a talent that some people are better at than others, and it's a talent that can be exercised and strengthened. A lot of them will just help, like this guy. I mean, these people online will just help, for the sake of helping. So, and not everybody's going to be right all the time. A basketball player isn't 100% all the time. But
so
yeah,
I did used to believe in psychic abilities. In fact, I thought I had some type of Although I didn't call it a psychic ability, I was at one point convinced I had it, because I found that with the people around me, I was able to determine, I don't want to necessarily say their thoughts, but, how they were going to react to things, or if they were lying. Like, I have a pretty good BS detector when someone's lying to me. Unfortunately, as I learned more, though, I realized I was picking up on subtle facial cues and body language, and just the things they were saying. And after recognizing that, I didn't guess I stopped believing in psychics and considered it more cold or hot reading techniques that they use.
Yeah, I can see that. That definitely is part of, that goes on. But, it's kind of different than these double-blind experiments where they pick a target, a completely random scene on a picture, and then suddenly, completely nobody involved in the experiment even knows what the thing is. In some cases, the thing hasn't even happened yet, and somehow these remote viewers can. And what they do is they just pick up, they might draw like a waterfall, just random kind of shapes and stuff, and then but it ends up being, the scene. And again, they're not right all the time, and not every. The idea is to not think about it. It just comes automatically. But
so in the study you had sent me, the guy drew a microwave, like it was a microwave emitter, and I guess he wasn't completely accurate, but they had determined that because he got enough right on that guess, that there was no other conclusion they could come to outside of psychic ability. Do you think that's reasonable?
I can't recall exactly that part of it, but that could be, that could be a bad thing to just assume that, this is the only other option for sure. So no, that wouldn't be reasonable to just assume that, this is the only option. But sometimes when things are just so random that they're picking up on, how could it just be chance? Like all the things in the world that they could draw,
That's called an argument from incredulity. That's another fallacy. I don't know how to explain this, so what else could it be? Therefore, psychic phenomena is real. That's a fallacy. That's one of those cognitive traps I was talking about.
Okay, and I'm admitting that, yeah, that can go on for sure, and that's not desirable.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you're open to the possibility that, if we're looking at, for example, the article you sent me, that maybe this study itself isn't evidence for a psychic. Is that possible? Or is that accurate?
No, because these studies are far more in depth than we're giving them credit for, and I've got a whole list. I mean, I can't just rattle off, the results of it, but I can send you a list of these feedback considerations in anomalous cognition experiments, and these are all on CIA's website. Target and sender dependencies and anomalous cognition experiments. I mean, it's far beyond even my scope. I'm not very good at math, but I mean, I it's not soundbite friendly, is what I'm saying, and
right.
Skeptics like to speak in sound bites, and but not really look at the studies.
You keep strawmanning skeptics. It's hysterical. Listen, I'll tell you something about me. I actually work for the Department of Homeland Security, and a huge part of my job is fraud detection. I work for a multi-billion-dollar department where we interrogate people on a daily basis, and we don't use psychics ever for anything. When there are super high stakes, when people's lives are on the line, we don't use psychics. And if the CIA had established
no one is saying you should be.
I'm sorry?
No one is saying that you should be. Nobody, even in these documents, they say this is not something you should rely on completely. It's complementary, and for your uses, that would not be appropriate.
Well, so when would it be appropriate to use?
Missing persons cases, as it has been.
Are you open to the possibility that in the cases where psychics, which from what I've seen are, it's very slim, where psychics are able to find a missing person, that they're just really, really good at investigations, as opposed to jumping to, having this psychic ability?
No, because they're not given any information. They're not going to, I mean, in some instances, I'm sure there's somebody who would go and investigate on their own just to make themselves look like psychics. But I mean, that's pretty rare, I would think. And in most cases, they don't have the time to investigate. They don't have the skill to find things that the police didn't find. Usually they don't want to know anything about the case.
How do you, okay, so I kind of think you're painting it with a broad brush here. Now, I think we agreed earlier on that we can all be biased, but it does sound like you're not even open to the possibility that there is a natural explanation.
First of all, this is natural. I've never said this is not natural. This is, I don't believe this is supernatural. This is a natural skill. I did say that there are frauds. There are people who will do what you're saying, but in a lot of cases, that's not an adequate explanation for what's going on.
I mean, Project Stargate. Also, this is like, I'll say it. This is like, conspiracy theory stuff. This is we've got the declassified documents that show that the psychics are real. But then when you actually look at the documents, we shouldn't use this for anything. This is supplemental because it happens at a rate roughly equivalent to guessing. I don't understand.
What about the briefing aid from the department or the Defense Intelligence Agency called An Overview of Stargate Activities? It concluded that remote viewing is a real phenomenon, not degraded by distance or shielding. Ability can be improved, has application potential. You have to say that either they're wrong or they're lying.
Either they're wrong or they're lying. Well, I'm not familiar with the study, but I'd want to look at methodologies. I'd want to know if they're saying that a 30% success rate is, this is real, like in the other Project Stargate stuff you sent over. I'd want to know, what the numbers are. I'd want to look at the evidence and how they tested.
You're in luck because I put together a whole book and I, organized it by all this kind of stuff. So, of course, all this stuff is free and you can look it up yourself. But if you want a nice coffee table book, you can have it. If this study, the one study that I sent you, was your first introduction to this, and you've already made a conclusion about it,
well, it's not, and I haven't. I've talked to people about psychic phenomena for years, and it's always kind of the same thing. It's what we talked about with the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. It's confirmation bias. It's just cognitive dissonance piled on top of cognitive trap after cognitive trap. I'm open to why changes with the evidence, though.
Why did the government pour millions of dollars into it for 2 decades?
Probably because they wanted to, investigate it and see if there was any credibility to it. Because I would think that, with such an astronomical claim, if it was real, the government would want to harness that ability and use it. I guess where my issue comes.
And they do.
My understanding is that they did this because the Russians were doing it. That's the short answer, is that there was intel that the Russians were investigating psychic phenomena, and so the Americans jumped in to see if there was anything to it.
And they kept going for 2 decades.
That's kind of, that can be how it goes with government-funded programs sometimes. The government isn't always super duper smart.
And particularly people, an overwhelming amount of people seem to believe it. So I would understand why they would want to investigate it. I guess where I get hung up is these studies don't ever seem to be independently corroborated. Why do you think that is?
That's not true.
Well, and again, just to answer the previous question of why would they do this for 2 decades? Why would they dump millions of dollars into it? Because the stakes are super high, super, 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 super high. So, the fact that they dumped all these millions of dollars into it But then, you know, in the aftermath of this, you know, and even while it was going on, there was an assassination attempt on President Reagan. There was 9/11. In the years since, I mean, there's example after example after example of things happening that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if we had access to psychics.
Well, I've heard a couple of people claim that they did actually remote view, like where Osama was, and also some other instances in war, like where hostages were, but you know, they didn't, you know, the higher ups didn't act on it or whatever.
Well, I mean,
it would be hard to convince them, really. I don't know.
But
if you Google an overview of Stargate activities, you know, right there, like I said, it concludes that, you know, remote viewing is a real phenomenon, accesses information without the use of normal five senses, on and on. I mean, so.
Right, but I can also Google.
They're either wrong or they're lying.
I can find. Well, then right now, I typically don't attribute to malice what can be explained by error. So I would err on the side of wrong, not lying. But you're saying Google it. I can get Google hits for flat Earth and secret cancer cures that are being hidden by the Illuminati lizard people.
These are actual studies. I can send you the whole list.
No, I understand, but I can find anything on Google. People talking about, you know, 9/11 conspiracies and you can
find university studies on you know, like this is psi phenomenon. This has been studied extensively. It's not the same thing.
Are they peer reviewed studies?
Absolutely.
Why do you? I'm trying to think of the.
And again, you said that you said something like everybody thinks this is real. No, most people think this is not real, and you know, you get, you know, ridiculed if you kind of talk about this stuff.
I wouldn't say you get. Yes, there are people who ridicule it, but I personally find it, you know, better suited to attack the science, or as kind of says, you know, the methodology. And, you know, unfortunately, I'm having trouble wrapping my mind around it, because I would think this would be a tool that would be that people would want to utilize. And sorry, the entire world would want to utilize this tool as opposed to ridicule it. And in fact, I would think many of these scientists would want to show that this happens and prove the naysayers wrong. And it seems like it would be pretty easy for them to just get together and show it. I just got one of your links.
Yeah, the stakes are just too high.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if more of them thought like you, but they have careers to defend and you know, egos to defend. Really,
that's not how science works. That's not how scientists work
that way. But
it doesn't. Everything about science as a method, science depends on proving people wrong. And when you're the guy who steps forward to prove everybody wrong when you're the guy who steps forward to demonstrate psychic phenomena, you're going to collect your Nobel Prize. You're going to be at the forefront of all the attention. And then all of science is going to click into gear to prove that guy wrong, because that's how it works. It's all about falsifiability. That is the cornerstone that all of science is built on. So the way you're characterizing skepticism, the way you're characterizing science right out of the gate, tells me that you might want to hang out with more scientists. You may be surprised,
or hang out with us more.
Well, that's fair. Yeah.
I guess my other concern is you are referencing these scientific studies, but then you also made a point that you're not very good at math. I find that to be a little concerning.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about these, you know, if you look at this one, target and sender dependencies in anomalous cognition experiments, Lance, Luke, and May, it's got some pretty, you know, extensive math. And yeah, I'll admit I'm not very good at math. It doesn't matter. You know, like I said, I'm not really interested in, like, it doesn't make any difference to me, like, what you guys believe. But, you know, I'm going to speak my truth. I'm going to tell you,
course.
you know, where to look for it. And, you know, that's up to you if you're interested in it. It doesn't really matter to me at all.
I'm gonna plant a flag and say that because
I'm not the one writing this studies, so I don't need to be good at math.
well, but you're writing books, and you touched on something that's a pet peeve, and this isn't directed at you, but just generally, when people say my truth, it's like nails on a chalkboard to me, because truth is that which corresponds with reality. The truth is that which the truth is what the facts are. So I can have a perspective, which is a great name for a show, by the way, Ethan. I can have a perspective, but in terms of having a truth, I might be able to get a piece of the truth, but the truth is independent of whatever my opinion of it is. That's what truth is, sort of by definition. So, you know, and Ethan and I are people who do care very much about whether or not our views and our beliefs correspond with reality. So when we talk about stuff like psychic phenomena, I mean, I'll say this too, Ethan, I'm not very good at math. When I was in college, I took like the math for English majors that was like for the you know, kids who couldn't do math good. So I don't have time to think about the data that much on things like this. So I defer to, we have a whole class of people who do have the time and the knowledge and the skills to think about this stuff. We call them experts. And among experts, psychic phenomena, the acceptance of psychic phenomena has been a fringe position for like ever, basically. Since we developed a scientific method to test claims, psychic phenomena has not been something that most experts take very seriously. And I'm wondering, with the stakes, again, with the stakes being as high as they are, why do you think that is? Do you really think that it's about this protecting of an ego type of thing, or what?
I think it's ignorance, and just people haven't invested the time, money, and energy, you know, as they have other things.
I mean, I've personally invested a lot of time into researching psychic phenomena, particularly after my mother started seeing one in an attempt, or a medium in an attempt to communicate with my brother who passed away. And I can tell you from my own experience, I was just getting frustrated, and the more I read, the more unconvinced I became of any of these claims. So I guess my main question would be, if going back to your study, or any of these studies, if there is, these psychics can't offer anything more than 50%, which is the equivalent of chance, why would we accept a psychic claim?
Well, I think it needs to be developed and worked on collectively. You know, I think if we start accepting it more, practicing, it'll get better.
So you think if I'm understanding you correctly, the main problem is we haven't accepted it?
I think it's been an area of ridicule for too long, and people are not, you know, very willing to get into things that they don't want to be the nail that sticks out and get hammered first.
I think you're absolutely right that people don't want to be the nail that sticks out and get hammered. I think you're absolutely right that it takes, you know, real courage and strength of conviction to go against the crowd. So I don't question at all your sincerity in believing in what you're talking about. But I think that there's also something to the idea that this stuff is so widely ridiculed because it seems that every time researchers really go to work investigating psychics, they turn out to be frauds more often than not. Or if they're not frauds, they're people who sincerely believe that they have powers, but they are essentially like lucky guessing their way through careers as psychics or mediums, or I think the term now is grande, actually, Ethan, not medium. But that's a Starbucks joke, Ethan. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be, you know, grande, medium. Anyway.
I didn't catch that.
I've had that happen, going to Starbucks, like, I want a medium, and they're like, it's grande, and I'm like, okay, you know what I meant. I wanted the thing. But do you think that ridicule is, and I should clarify that even if every single time we investigate a psychic claim, it turns out to be spurious. It turns out to be not real. That doesn't mean that there's not some true psychic out there just waiting to be found. So we should continue investigating stuff and being skeptical and doing the work. But do you think that ridicule is earned at this point with regard to psychics and public perception generally?
I mean, of course, there's going to be frauds, and those are going to be the ones that get the most attention. But if you look at the research, Stanford Research Institute on this on psi phenomenon, I think that gets too boring for people, and they don't. I mean, they're not ridiculing that. They're not really even looking at the stuff. That's the truth. I think a lot of people who will criticize stuff without even having looked at it.
Well, if you send stuff far away,
studies as soon as we get off here.
Yeah, I'll take a look at anything that you send over. Do you believe that there are any other conspiracies out there that people should sort of be aware of or red-pilled on?
Let's see. Well, another subject. One of my books is MK Ultra, and
mind reading, right?
I'm sure you guys are familiar.
Or mind control, is that correct?
Yeah, another shady CIA adventure into mind control in the 50s and 60s. But that's another one that kind of red-pilled me early on. A lot of these things, it's so funny that like you wouldn't believe them, but the documents exist. Like somebody said the CIA was doing mind control experiments, giving people a bunch of LSD and all these weird torture things. You wouldn't believe them except for the documents actually exist that say, that happened. So I like to give people the actual documents in the books. These are just compilations of public domain stuff with commentary. They should be able to look at it themselves.
So what was particularly of those articles most convincing to you?
I don't know. I like this one point, what I said about the claim that aspirin lowers the risk of heart attacks, and the chance of probability being like 10 times higher than that.
So, but here's the thing with aspirin. I don't want to sound glib, but aspirin is a real thing, and we can like investigate that. Whereas as psychics and mind reading, it isn't necessarily convincing just yet, or it is much harder to investigate.
And the claims about aspirin aren't like some sort of benchmark. I mean, what if they could be wrong about aspirin? I'm fully open to if there's data indicating that National Academy of Science or physicians everywhere everybody's wrong about aspirin, then I just want to see the evidence for that, and I'd want to look at their testing methodologies and all that. It's just a really interesting thing, because when you talk about something like MK Ultra, I mean, there are a number of conspiracies that can be fully talked about. They're real things. MK Ultra happened. Exactly what happened, it seems to be something that people get into the weeds on, but the CIA was looking at different interrogation and mind control techniques and got way out of hand and abusive and criminal with their activities. It's things like the PRISM affair, the whole thing with the NSA, with Edward Snowden coming out and talking about, that's a conspiracy that was legit. The Tuskegee syphilis experiments, that's a horrific chapter in our history. That's a legit, the FBI forensic debacle where people, there were methods in forensic labs that were messed up, and people were covering each other's backs and lying about it and sending innocent people to jail. But what seems interesting to me is that the fact that there are legitimate conspiracies out there provides cover for things like moon landing hoaxes and anti-vaxxers and QAnon and a whole host of other 9/11 conspiracies, all these things that are out there. So it becomes, I think, even more important in an era where we're just constantly being flooded with information, especially by social media companies who have a vested interest in keeping us clicking on things, keeping us watching the YouTube videos. So they want to feed us the most salacious, inflammatory. Yeah, I mean, there's an interest in telling you the government's lying to you about everything, and here's the Alex Jones video that proves it. It becomes more important now, maybe than ever before, to have really, really sound epistemology. So I wonder what are the methodologies that you apply when you're evaluating different claims to see, what's true, what's not.
Well, if it has evidence from universities, government papers, this type of thing would be pretty compelling. In these cases, I mean, what are you supposed to do? Like, just dismiss MK Ultra because it might cause people to believe other conspiracies?
No, absolutely not.
Don't accept it until you have a reason to believe it's true. So that's kind of the approach I take when conspiracies come out. I don't just accept them, or I also don't reject them until I've done the research and looked into it myself, and then I can determine whether I think it's true or not.
I'll tell you with conspiracies what a couple of the metrics that I like to use, and you can let me know if you think this is just me just revealing my bias here. It could be. There's been really, really good papers that have been published about the statistical likelihood of large groups of people being able to keep secrets for long periods of time. You can see, based on how many employees were at NASA, for example, during the moon landing, there's really good mathematical modeling out there of how long you can expect a group of people that large to keep a secret. For a moon landing hoax, it's like 3.5 years tops. And it varies based on the size. Smaller organizations are going to be able to keep secrets longer. Big ones are going to leak faster. With things like the NSA and the PRISM scandal, that leaked in like 6 years, which is exactly what you would expect given the number of people who knew about it. So I look at that. I look at how long has the conspiracy allegedly been going on, and how many people are being expected to keep this secret. Because I can't even plan a surprise party for my fiance without someone talking. And so the idea that the government's going to be able to keep psychics under the lid for like 50 years, that's hard for me to go along with. And the other thing I look at,
under the lid, it's all out in the open.
Well,
all the Project Stargate stuff is public domain. You can look it up yourself.
Right. No, I'm with you on that. But the idea that there's going to still be this vested interest of people who know the psychic stuff is real, but they're going to keep the public from accepting it because they've got to protect their jobs as scientists or researchers or that kind of thing is where I start to run into trouble. And the other thing I look at is if
that's the case, I think they probably just have dismissed it like a lot of people did without actually looking at it.
Why do you make the assumption that everybody just dismisses it without looking at it?
Because I have two skeptics here who have not looked at any of the studies.
Well, I've looked at stuff from James Randi's, from 50 years of James Randi debunking psychics. I am absolutely nowhere near as familiar with the CIA.
That it can't be real, so you look for stuff that debunks it.
I've already said that I'm open to the idea of it being real. All it would take is good evidence.
But, all right, well, what about the Manhattan Project? How long? I'm curious. I don't know how long that was kept secret. The development of the atom bomb. That was kept secret for quite a long time.
I couldn't tell you. I'll give you really quick. The other thing that I look at when it comes to things like conspiracy theories is if it affects rich people. So like I talked to a guy last year who was super duper into chemtrails and was like, the wealthy ruling class is gassing the air to control our minds, right? And I'm like, the wealthy class still breathes the air. So, I mean, if they're pumping stuff in the air to make us all, more compliant or something, this gets complicated, or the idea that there's like a secret cancer cure. Meanwhile, guys like Steve Jobs are dying of cancer. If there was, so, stuff like that. So, I mean, these are not perfect metrics by any means, but I think that I think for guys like Ethan and I, the default position is to just not believe stuff until there's good evidence in front of us.
And understand, I'm a curious dude, and the idea that there
in
could,
every sense of the word.
Yeah, Kenneth knows that to be true because wait a second. Because I am literally like constantly asking questions. I'm bothering him. I'm bothering my friend Puck. I am always looking into these things because they fascinate me. And I assure you, like anything supernatural, I want to believe it. Like the idea that this could be true is exciting to me. I'm not dismissing it because I don't want to believe it. I'm dismissing it because there hasn't been good evidence to support it.
Okay.
And all I would suggest is you're going to send me some reading material. I would recommend there is a book by, oh man, crap. Hang on. Give me 5 seconds. I'm blanking on his name and I don't want to say it now.
Have you started doing book recommendations? Is this a new thing?
Dave Worley's book, Fantastic Fallacies and Where to Find Them. I am halfway into it and I absolutely love it. And honestly, learning like fallacious arguments has been one of the best things that has ever happened to me because it started to weed out things I was believing that I didn't have a good reason to believe. And I would definitely encourage not just you, but everybody watching to study these fallacies. Because to me, it did me a tremendous service. It got me to where I'm at today. But I assure you, if I'm wrong and these supernatural things are real, I want to know because in the back of my head, understand when I think about these things, I have one goal in mind, that there is the possibility that I could communicate with my brother who is no longer here. So I assure you, I am excited about these things. And if they're true, I want to know them. But I just, unfortunately, haven't seen good evidence to believe them. But with that, I do know you're running out of time. So I did want to thank you for calling in.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I'll send you some of those studies to look over.
Yeah, please do. I'll get them over to Kenneth and we'll review them. And I
Awesome.
hope you have a good rest of your week, man.
Okay, you too. Thanks.
All right.
Yep. Bye.
I'm going to piggyback on you talking about fantastic fallacies, and David's book is fantastic. It's an excellent introduction to these concepts, and the examples that he uses are very, very good. For anyone who checks that out and wants to go even a little bit deeper, I think this should be mandatory reading in every high school in the United States, is this book right here, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky won a Nobel Prize in 2002 for their work on decision making. And this book gets into all the ways that your brain is bad at making decisions. You're bad at assessing information. You're quick to jump to bad conclusions. And it happens to all of us. There are these cognitive traps that we all fall into. And if you want to go super deep in understanding kind of the how and the why of your brain kind of constantly messing up stuff, this is a great resource. I highly recommend it to everybody. Okay, I'm done. That's it.
No, that's good. And yeah, Kenneth, when I first started doing this, I was like, screw it. I'm going to start a YouTube channel and just run with it. And I think I did a pretty good job of making a splash, but now I find my position where I'm in the position where I have to learn a lot more because I watch you, Puck, and people that come on my show, like I watch you guys talk and I'm always amazed at how well you can articulate your thoughts and how well you can break these things down. And it's like, I can't wait to be able to do that. So now I'm putting my time to learning. Like I've taken all your podcasts and that's all I've been doing. Like while I'm at work, Monday through Friday now, all I'm doing is listening to podcasts. I'm like, you're
gonna get addicted. There's this, yeah. I mean, I think that I think the best thing that can happen to a person is being aware, being like really having to confront the idea that they probably don't know anywhere near as many things as they think they know, and then using that as a jumping off point to be curious, to be hungry, to be skeptical, and to just kind of drink from the fire hose of knowledge that is out there. Once you start, it's it's like a Pringles can, or Lay's. What is the one we one you can't stop?
Well, it's true, because honestly, I want to get to a point where I can handle all of this on my own and break down anything someone presents in front of me, like you and other people. And
I can't do that. There's
and if you undersell yourself, dude.
No. Well, this is the thing that I've been learning over the years, is that what you know is so much less important than just how you engage in conversations with people. Being able to admit that you don't know stuff is a great starting point for that. When Axel was starting to talk about all these studies, I mean, he's clearly done a bunch of research on stuff that I haven't read. So I can't really speak to those things, and trying to engage with him and be like, well, those studies are great, or those studies are crap. I would be pulling those opinions right out of my ass. And that is not a place where any of us should be pulling things out, unless you're into that. I mean, I'm not judging anybody if they put things in, take things out, whatever you want to do. We're humanists. We be happy. Sorry, what were you? You said I was smart. I don't think so. I just try to talk to people honestly. That's all. That's it.
Kenneth, you always make me laugh, dude.
Do we have more callers?
No, we don't have any more callers.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I tried to get Okky to come on. One of the people.
I cannot express my disappointment that didn't happen.
I know. Hopefully, I can get him to call in. Maybe next week when Brain Bug's on.
There you go. Yeah.
But what's exciting about this is I feel like I get to learn as I do this. And granted, I'm sure everyone thinks that, but it's like looking back on my videos from the first time, I met a precept versus today. I'm like, maybe I'm not improving as fast as I would like to, but I am improving, and I'm proud of that, and I'm happy. And, one day, Kenneth, I want to be able to go toe to toe with you. And I don't mean in a debate, but I mean like being able to keep up with everything you say.
Like not in a debate, but like Batman, like in an alley. I'm going to karate chop you.
No.
But again, I really think that a book like Thinking Fast and Slow, books like what David did, these are books that are about how to think. And these are, when we talk about, these are skills, being able to identify fallacies and stuff. I've learned so much from listening to, guys like, Matt Dillahunty and, Eric and V and Jenna and all of the incredible content creators that are out there in the skeptical community. Seth Andrews. There's so many people. Aaron Ra that I'm just absorbing skills that these people have developed. And the great thing about skepticism is it works all the time.
One of the best things I ever learned from Matt is that I don't know is not an acceptable answer for God, or I don't know, therefore God. Like when he first said that to me, that was one of the things that resonated with me most, because I found that for the majority of my life, I was making that argument. What else could it be?
Yeah.
It's God. And like when I heard that, it's like everything just fell away. And I was like, well, not believing that anymore. Like I was, as I've said before, I was one of the lucky ones. It was kind of easy for me not to believe in God.
When people say, I don't know, there's a feeling of inadequacy. There's a feeling that like something's wrong with you.
Yes.
It's very similar to when you're confronted with the evidence that you're wrong about something. There's really interesting studies out there indicating that people who are really like ideologically invested in certain positions, if you hit them with the evidence, their result of that, their response is to dig deeper, is to double down on their position. So again, and it's all these are cognitive traps that you can become aware of, that you can learn your way out of, and just try to be. I mean, really, all any of us can do is try to be less wrong all the time. You know,
there's a term for that, like identity protective cognition or something like that. And it is fascinating. I mean, I have found that I've done that too. Like when someone says I'm wrong, I'm like, no. And then, I don't know, I've made that mistake, and I'd like to not make that mistake.
Yeah.
And believe as many true things as possible and get rid of all the false crap.
Yeah. And the question of how we get there is, I'm just increasingly convinced. I was talking earlier today with a couple people about this. I think that bad epistemology is like a colossal threat to our species. That failing to exercise our critical thinking faculties is leading us down some pretty terrifying paths. And again, these are learned. You don't have to be a smart person to be a rational person. You don't have to have some Mensa IQ to just be able to sort of follow the steps to not falling into certain traps.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have any other callers. We got a solid hour, so I mean, I'm good with that.
I'm here for you. I'm on board the Ethan train. So whenever we arrive at the station, I'm going to keep going on this metaphor. The conductor is going to let me off, and I'm going to pick up my bags and transfer to a different train.
Have you not been paying attention? I have no idea where the station is. I'm just like, dude, I'm literally, I'll be the first to admit, I have no idea what I'm doing at all. I literally just started a YouTube channel, found StreamYard, and was like, okay, this works. And I just started going. But I don't know. I have a goal, and that's to keep going. That's to continue to have friendly dialogue with people I disagree with. I want to lend a compassionate ear to these people, because understand, the reason I'm more patient is because in my eyes, I was these people. I was believing these things without good reason. And I wasn't intentionally trying to believe crap. Sorry, that's mean. I wasn't intentionally trying to believe like
shit. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Bullshit. I thought I was using everything at my disposal to come to a justifiable conclusion, and I was wrong. But it wasn't out of like malice or stupidity. It was just I didn't understand, and that's why I want to be more patient with these people, because the second they see us get more defensive and we go on the attack, they get defensive and they stop listening to us. I want them to listen to what I have to say, to what we have to say. I want to be able to do this and change people's minds.
Yeah. Well, one of the most beneficial things I think of Axel's call was him voicing his conceptions of what skeptics are, and how skeptics think. It's an important thing. I think that there's a negative tendency among a lot of skeptics to act like they shed some irrational belief and then now they've arrived. Now you are a skeptic and you don't believe any stupid shit anymore. But we all believe stupid shit, right? Yeah. And talking about Matt Dillon, he and Jenna Belk made this point on Sunday's episode of AXP, that skepticism is a process. It's not something that you ever arrive at and you are now the enlightened one who doesn't have any, you can't fall into a cognitive trap. And, all of us have stupid, irrational beliefs, everyone.
And I find that people, we do have a caller, by the way, which I'll get to in one moment. But I do find that people tend to use skeptic in a derogatory sense. Like he, cited professional skeptics. Like,
yeah, which we're not getting paid.
No. Yeah, and I mean, there are skeptics out there that are, well, I guess they're not skeptics if they're dicks and dismissing evidence without actually investigating it, but.
Yeah, that kind of wouldn't be skeptical to be like, I know the thing and anything you show me isn't going to change my mind. That's super duper not skeptical.
Exactly. Super duper.
It's a scientific term. Super
exactly.
duper.
Are you ready for our last caller?
It's like an exponential of the super, the duper. Yeah, I'm ready for a call.
All right. We have Grumpy. It says, "Call me Grumpy. You're on with Kenneth and Ethan. How are you?"
I'm doing fine. I thought I would call and tell you about a thing called the spook light, which is a phenomenon that occurs on this road in the southwest corner of Missouri, real close to the Oklahoma border. It's been, it was first reported like in the 1800s, and sometime several years ago, the Army Corps of Engineers came out and investigated, and I think there was a report on the wiki page that said that around 2014 it was solved, but I'm not sure about that. I did see something, but I'm not sure that I was ever out there sober, so I don't know what I saw.
So what do you think it was?
I have no idea. It was a light, and it changed colors, and it moved back and forth across the road. And if we walked towards it, it seemed to move further away. And other people would have claimed they saw it move towards them or move through their car. I don't know. It changed colors. It would split into, but like I said, I saw it as a teenager, and I was usually loaded. So I don't know what I saw.
So you're not necessarily convinced it's like aliens or anything supernatural, or whereabouts are you at on this?
I saw something. I don't know what it was. I don't think I really settled on. I mean, I had no problem saying, "Oh, that's just weird. I don't know what it is. It's weird. Nobody else seems to know what it is either." There's a little museum out there on the road. They have a Facebook page. I don't think they let people. It used to be like a place that, like a redneck hangout.
Okay.
I don't know. People would go hang out, and a party on the road and try to see if they could see it.
Now, are you from Missouri?
I am.
Now, have you heard it called just the spook light, the Hornet spook light, the Joplin spook light? What did they call it when you were out there?
I just always knew it as a spook light, but yeah, it's listed under Hornet spook light or Joplin spook light.
Have you ever looked at any of the possible explanations for it?
I recently skimmed through the wiki page on it.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing because the earliest photos that I'm aware of the spook light are like 120 years old. They go way back, and our listeners wouldn't know that we're talking about a very hilly part of the sort of the southern Missouri, northern Oklahoma border area, right? My understanding is that the spook light phenomena started to be described right around the same time that a highway was going through the area, and that people have sort of explained away the spook light as lights from one of the highways about like 10 miles away being visible from this one road, and that the lights sort of come in and out and go with the cars. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I've heard that.
I'd be interested in looking. Here's me being skeptical about the explanation. I'd be interested in looking at if there are photos of the spook light from before when there were cars.
Ooh.
Right, that's what I was wondering. I was trying to figure out when cars became popular enough in this area.
or if those roads were used by wagons where people would have lanterns, maybe I would want to, as a skeptic, my immediate impulse is to want to blow a hole in the commonly accepted explanation of it being light from the highway, because I'm under the impression that there are photos of the spook light from, if not right around the time cars were a thing, like just before. So I'd want to know. I'd want to test it. I'd want to do more research. But I am familiar with what you're talking about. I've got family down in Missouri.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Grumpy, I want to thank you for taking the time to call. And you don't sound so grumpy.
I'm glad I was able.
Yeah, sounds downright cheerful.
With my old age and cognitive decline, things happen.
Yeah, it's happening to all of us, right?
You're not old. Don't say that. But I do hope you I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day and have a really good week.
Hey, you too. Thanks.
Right. Bye-bye. Yeah,
Ethan, you should look at the old-timey photos of the spook light from like 100 years ago, the old black and white photos. It looks super, super creepy. And I could see why people would be going down this road that's not, it's not close to the highway. I mean, it's like a solid 8 to 10 miles away. And being like, oh my God, where's this thing that like floats and then disappears, and turning it into a bit of a local, legend.
I will definitely take a look at it.
When I was growing up in San Diego, we had a screaming tree. That was the thing. You'd hike out to, it was in, I want to say Lakeside. If there's any Southern Californians watching, they might correct me on this, but me and a friend of mine, we were teenagers. We took a couple of girls we had crushes on, and we were going to like go out to the screaming tree and see if, them being spooked out would, make us look like heroes by not being spooked out. But then we were super duper scared, and like being, every rustle in the bushes, we're like, oh my God, it's a mountain lion. We're all going to die. So it kind of backfired on us because we weren't that cool. But there was allegedly a shrieking tree, and we went out there and there was a tree that did not scream at us.
Well, yeah. I wish I could have seen this screaming tree.
Yeah.
I went to what's the name of this place? It's Bachelor's Grove, the supposed scariest cemetery in Illinois. I went there. They don't let you go at night, at least at the time I went.
Because of the ghosts. I get that. That's a liability thing.
But apparently police, because people were going there so frequently, essentially police started monitoring it constantly. And I went with a family member who is more susceptible to supernatural beliefs, and she's going over like some of the graves, and she's like, I'm really sensing something here. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, like, yeah. I want to believe it, but I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. It was just a cemetery. And I think people sometimes get in their own heads. They'll convince themselves that something is spooky or haunted, and then all of a sudden, anything they hear, they think is a ghost or something supernatural.
And that's a huge thing. Personal experience is a thing that we should all be skeptical of our own experiences. You might, there was in San Diego, there's a haunted house called the Whaley House, and they do tours of it, and then they'll tell you scary, ghost stories when you walk through. I remember going through that when I was a little kid and being like walking through this area where like it was supposed to be haunted and feeling really cold and being like, oh my gosh, I was cold right there and not over there. So that's where the ghosts are. That's science. And like, but my personal experience, really in that instance shouldn't have been convincing to me, and it certainly shouldn't be convincing to anybody else. If I can't demonstrate, if I can't present evidence, I can say I was cold because of the ghost, or I was abducted by aliens, or I, talked to God, and nobody should think that that's a compelling reason to believe anything I have to say.
Yeah. Hi, SJ. We were visited by a cemetery all the time with our friends. We'd pull citizens' arrest on the couples who were in their cars. Yeah, damn.
SJ, it's opposite of wingmanning. This is,
Yeah, you're supposed to be helping them out, SJ.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, I would be pretty scared too if someone busted me in my car. I used to have a spot or actually this girl found the spot for me where we'd go and make out after high school. Everyone went there. So when she asked me, I was like, Yep, we're totally making out. I was all excited. Anyway,
you were psychic, I guess. I mean, you predicted ahead of time what was going to happen. We gotta call Axel back so I can apologize for my skepticism.
Yeah. Where can people find you, and what do you have going on?
So I am I'm a YouTuber, but not.
Wait. Say that again.
I'm out as a YouTuber as of right now.
Are you a YouTuber? I've been waiting for it.
The level of excitement is just totally disproportionate to. Anyway, yeah. So I've got a channel, and what I'm beginning to do is make videos talking about skepticism, and moving forward, it's sort of taking shape of what I think the plan is going to be is to comment more on current events and how to be skeptical in light of things that are happening in the world. So people can, rather than the more abstract, just educational video type stuff that I was originally setting out to do. So that's a thing. You can look for me on the YouTubes. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. And when Ethan will have me, I'm on here.
I love when you come on. Actually, you know what I got to do right now is I had this great idea to have you as like the surprise host, but because I put all question marks as who's the guest is, I didn't have any information. But I am adding it to the YouTube description right now.
It looked like a guy with a bag over his head on the thing. I clicked on it and it was like, who's hosting? And it's like a guy, some disfigured guy. Yeah.
So you can check Kenneth out at youtube.com/Kenny Leonard, which I don't know how you got a custom URL already, because usually you don't get those till you
I'll tell anybody who goes and takes a look, prepare to be whelmed. I wouldn't say over or under, just right in the middle there. But we're gonna start cranking out more.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more videos. 1 second, I've almost got the description updated. Kenny Leonard. Sorry, trying to.
That's what the people tune in for, real time.
So, check out Kenny. By the way, if you like what I do, consider donating or signing up for my Patreon, where you can donate just as little as $1 a month. And
look, don't consider, just go do it. Okay, this is not a thing to be on the fence about. Just go do it. And smash that like and subscribe button while you're at it.
Yes. And thank you to my patrons, City Plaza, Kenneth Leonard, Kathy Letto, Ian Davenport, Bestname Ever, and Blazing Wizard Pope. You guys are all awesome, and I appreciate you doing it. Please make sure you check out Kenneth's channel. He is your friendly neighborhood atheist approved.
Hey, stamped.
So, yeah. Everyone, I hope you have a good week. What do I got going on tomorrow? Ooh, youtube.com/YFNA News is part 2 of my interview with 2 other Republicans. I'm quite excited about that one. And then on this channel at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, Jenna Belk will be hosting the Women of Atheism Roundtable.
That's going to be great. That's going to be fantastic.
And then lastly, on my other channel this Sunday with Jenna Belk, our weekly show is every Sunday at 11 a.m. Central Daylight Time. We'll be talking about mental health and sex. So it's going to be an exciting one. Anyways, Kenneth, as always, it's been a genuine pleasure. And thanks for taking the time to do this with me.
It's been super fun. Super duper fun, even.
Super duper. And everyone in the audience, have a good week and wear a mask.